8:32, everybody. New York City students heading back to the classroom next week. And while many school districts have a cell phone policy in place, Governor Hochul considering a statewide ban on smartphones in schools.
A new cell phone policy is expected to be implemented in February for more than 1,800 schools across New York City. So here to give us more insight on what that would look like and how it may be enforced is Chalkbeat reporter Alex Zimmerman. Good morning, Alex. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So you've been covering this extensively, statewide restrictions on cell phone use in schools. I mean, it already exists in Ohio, Florida, Indiana, and Oklahoma. So what does their program look like, and would it work here in New York City, do you think?
Yeah, so you're right. This year, about 8 states have passed laws or are in the process of issuing rules to restrict phone use. And I'd say there are a couple of main strategies here. One can be to try to ban phones just during class time, so students might be able to use them like during recess or during lunch. And some locals, that's sort of the approach that Florida took. And some local districts have gone further and are trying to ban phones like during the entire school day. The question of whether it could work in New York City is really interesting. There's currently a patchwork of policies in New York City. So some schools already do try to ban phones during the school day. And we've seen kind of a mix of sort of success with that. And I think it's also worth remembering that New York City did actually have a cell phone ban under former Mayor Michael Bloomberg. That was rescinded under Mayor Bill de Blasio. It was rescinded mostly because of concerns about equity, because, at schools with metal detectors, students were often having to pay local businesses a couple dollars a day to store their phones. And those schools were most likely to enroll more students of color and just be higher need schools generally, while other schools, kids could sort of just bring their phones into school and would be expected not to have them out. So there was sort of a differential in how that was policed.
Right.
So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see how this plays out with the citywide policy.
Yeah. What would it look like, though, right? Because some schools already require students to, I guess, carry their phones in these locked pouches, right? So with the governor's proposal, what's the insight on what's actually being considered? And does it differ between like New York City and New York State? Is it all just one blanket policy?
Yeah, so as far as I know, there aren't very many details on the statewide policy. Like Governor Hochul is committed to sort of working with lawmakers on that next session. In New York City, I think there are probably 2 main approaches that you could take. One is to, as you see on the graphic above, there are yonder pouches. You can, take phones from, you can let students keep their phones during the day, but they have to store them in these like lockable magnetic pouches. The other option is to take phones from students at the beginning of the day and sort of the school stores them itself, which can be kind of like logistically complicated. The downside to the yonder pouches is like students can figure out ways of getting into the pouches. We've seen some cases where students can put decoy phones in the yonder pouches and keep their actual phone on them all day. So there's no real perfect solution here, but there are lots of different possibilities.
Yeah, that's why I think a lot of people are wondering about enforcement, depending on whatever each school decides to do.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think there are lots of concerns about how much of this is going to fall onto teachers to enforce. So in the situation where students are allowed to have their phones on them during the day, like if schools aren't confiscating them, we've seen in schools that actually have those sorts of policies right now that teachers have told us that they spend a lot of time seizing, monitoring, safeguarding, and returning phones. And that can just be a really hard thing for teachers to manage on top of, everything else they're doing to educate kids. We've talked to some teachers who said that if their school does have a policy where teachers are required to police it, it really does kind of distract from instruction in some cases.
Yeah, I guess the question is, the governor is proposing this, but does the city fall under a different set of rules because it's Chancellor Banks who would have to make the call?
Yeah, so the city's own cell phone policy, I think, is going to end up being ahead of whatever the state decides. So the city has committed to instituting some sort of cell phone policy this coming school year, though probably not at the beginning of the school year. Based on what we've heard from principals, it sounds like they're headed toward unveiling a policy soon, but one that wouldn't actually take effect until later in the school year, probably around February. And then what the state is committing to is just some kind of policy process to figure out what the next steps will be. So that the state process feels pretty uncertain and vague right now. It's just the governor committing to forming some kind of policy around this.
I mean, you already mentioned that teachers are saying that this could be a distraction. What other kind of pushback is this policy getting? I mean, are parents saying things, students,
Like
principals?
Parents might say, like, well, I want to be in touch in case
I want
there's
to be
an
able to
emergency.
track my kids,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think you do often see pushback to these policies from parents who are really used to being able to be in touch with their kids during the day. You know, a lot of families have invested a considerable amount of money in smartphones for their kids and expect it to be a tool and a way for them to communicate. Like some students have, you know, caretaking responsibilities or jobs after school that require some amount of coordination during the day. And then, you know, from parents, you sometimes hear concerns about really awful situations like, you know, stabbings or shootings. Are there safety issues at schools that can crop up? I should say that, like, you know, that sort of violence at school is fairly rare, but do get a lot of attention when they happen. And I think, you know, can be kind of a safety blanket for parents who want to be able to be in touch with their kids in the case of emergencies. From principals, I think one of the things we hear is, you know, concern about, you know, how much support they're going to get from DOE to actually implement these policies.
Yeah.
You know, some of the solutions we've talked about, whether they're the Yonder pouches or even like some system to collect phones, like cell phone lockers, can be pretty pricey. You know, the Yonder pouches can go for like $25-30 a pop. We don't know exactly what the pricing would look like in New York City. Presumably, they would try to negotiate some broader thing with the district. But yeah, it can be really pricey, and there isn't much indication that the education department is gearing up to, you know, give schools a bunch of money in their budgets to implement that. Though we haven't seen final details on what the policy will look like.
So it sounds like it's all an idea in theory, and the details have not been released yet. All right, we'll stay in touch with you, Alex. Great reporting for you from Chalkbeat. Always good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.